Good morning.
Good morning, Glenn.
How you doing?
How are you doing?
Good. Yep. Pretty good.
Hey, actually, you were positive for COVID. Did you say that?
Yep.
Ah, you were so careful. How do you think you got it?
Oh, I mean, we've had over 200,000 cases in the country recently of this new variant, so could have picked it up from anywhere.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Omicron or something. Yeah.
I guess there's no sort of like sequencing testing.
So you had to kind of isolate yourself and all that?
Yeah, all that. So.
But you didn't feel sick?
Like a...
throat yeah.
Throat was a bit there, voice was a bit there, but it was sort of like a minor head cold for me. That's the extent of it. I'm still got a little bit of a lingering dry cough, but other than that, I feel fine.
You feel okay? Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Didn't hit me that hard at all, which is nice.
Yeah, I think it's in LA. They're saying it's going down, but
yeah, even here they're talking about getting close to the peak of it, and then once that happens, other restrictions will ease. So yeah, which is good. And how's things with you?
Things are kind of a routine. Falling, been trying to walk on the beach a little bit. It's wonderful.
Oh, I bet.
Living close, we don't take advantage of it. I have a
coming into some beautiful warm weather.
Yeah, warm weather now. And
nice.
How is the weather out there? Is it cold? It's reverse, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's still really nice and warm here though.
Yeah.
We're heading into our winter, yeah.
Yeah, it's getting warm and it's nice. And yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did I hear that you had COVID also?
Yeah, you had it?
I had it and it lasted like almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, mine lasted about probably 7 days or 8 days, but there's a sort of a lingering cough, which is kind of there, but otherwise I feel fine now. So
more better than a lot of other side effects.
Yeah. Yep, I've heard about some long COVID. Okay, we've gone the half now, so let's begin. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadidhamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we are here for the Q&A. So if there are any questions, please, by all means, go ahead.
Well, a lot of times when you explain something, I think I get it. And then when I try to really think about it, it's like kind of eludes me. So if you don't mind repeating what Shraddha really means in terms of our practice, how to practice it, and when you know you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, no, happy to repeat. Been doing it for a while, so yep. And returning the favor, we definitely had a lot of the stuff repeated back to us. So the word Shraddha translates as faith, as you know, but faith is it's kind of a weak translation of it. It's not enough to capture what Shraddha is. So Shraddha has two components. the first of the components is faith itself. So faith we consider to be a belief in a thing I do not know. So you accept the existence or the truth of something while knowing that you don't have knowledge of it. And he always gives the same examples when he's talking, or that come from the text. When you get into your Uber, you don't know that your Uber driver is going to take you to your destination. And yet you sit in the back and let him drive. So there's an act of faith there. You don't know it for certain, but you act as if it were true. Or go into a restaurant is another one he gives. You don't know that the food is not contaminated, but you act as if you did know it. So to believe something while at the same time knowing that you don't know it for certain is this act of faith. You get married to someone believing that they'll stay faithful. You don't know it for certain, but there's faith. So the element of faith becomes toxic when the faith is blind, when we hold something to be true, not because it's reasonable to do so, but because it caters to the ego, caters to fears or desires. So that's a toxic or blind faith. It's blind in the sense that you've got no reason to believe it. But with the other three examples, there are actually reasons which support the belief. The Uber driver has 5 stars and 150 ratings on the app. The restaurant has a health notice in the window with A+. You've known your partner for 10 years. These sorts of things, it's reasonable to assume. So faith is the first element. Yep.
You said it becomes toxic if it's catering ego, and you said fear, and what else?
Desire.
Desire.
Yeah. So that first element is the beginning of Shraddha. So when it comes to our practice, what is it that we have faith in? It would be faith in some unknown future. And that future is a state of our own being. There are truths about what it means to be spiritually mature. There are states that we're looking to reach, realizations that we are looking to make real for us. So, one that we've been talking about in the Ishavasya Upanishad recently is this idea of oneness. The sense that the ego looks about and sees division and demarcation, separate individual units. But the truth is that we're unified at the level of consciousness, that there is a unity or a oneness, that in essence we are the same. And it's not a a unity of multiplicity, by which I mean it's not still saying we are all individual and separate, and yet I'm going to work for a collective good, or to have sympathy for this larger whole. Because the truth, as far as I see it, is still we're individual, we're separate. But I can say we're all Americans, we're all humans, and so I have sympathy for others. But there's still a sense that the truth of existence is separateness. I've just sort of have a group feeling now. That's the beginning of it, but that sense of oneness grows into seeing that there is a level at which we are fundamentally the same. So that is not true for most of us. We don't see it that way, but we read about it, we hear about it. It sounds beautiful. We can recognize the benefit of to our relationships and to our interactions in the world if it were true and we realized it. There is faith in that truth, but it's not real for you. You don't actually feel that way. So the faith comes again from reading, reflecting, listening, questioning. There's a growing sense that there is something common to all of us. And then you begin to act on that basis. So this first part is the faith, right? The second part of Shraddha is any effort that you put in to turn that faith into knowledge. So you go back to your examples. The Uber driver takes you to your destination, and you've used the same Uber driver now 6 times. So it's no longer faith. You know the Uber driver. You've been to the restaurant 100 times. You know that it serves good food. You've been with your partner now 20 years. You know that they are faithful. So it's no longer faith. You've turned it into something that you know. How did you get there? Well, for those examples, it's just experience. But the idea of spiritual maturity is that it comes through our spiritual discipline or self-development practices, which is the effort. So that's the second part of Shraddha, is that you're trying to turn the faith element into knowledge. So how will you know if you're practicing Shraddha correctly? If you are doing what you know to be spiritual practice so that you can reach your spiritual ideal, then you're practicing Shraddha. It's an intellectual discipline in that sense. So he talks about this in one of the texts. There he puts it in terms of reflecting on the idea until it becomes real, until there is a realization of it. So he talks about it as an intellectual reflection. But that reflection doesn't just have to come from, say, sitting in your room and thinking about it. The reflection also comes from direct experience. So that's where, again, the faith element comes in. You act as if it were true. So you hold the idea in your mind, the sense of oneness. And it's not forced, it's just a general awareness of this principle. And then you act as if it were true. And what sort of feedback does that provide from the environment, from your own nature, from your own mind and intellect? As you get that feedback from actions that are based in this idea, you begin to see that it's actually true. And so that is the practice, is to think about it, to hold it in your awareness as an ideal, and to act simultaneously from it and towards it. So in terms of knowing whether or not you are practicing Shraddha, it's checking in on your own intentions. Have I been genuine in the attempt to understand these things? And have I been applying time, energy, effort in the direction of my growth?
So in other words, if you have faith in an ideal, and the ideal is always internal, it's not external, and it's in line with spiritual or personal development, that is the state that is a better state than where you are right now. And that is the state that if you're there, you're closer to being content, happy, whatever you want to call it. and practice in ways that, like you said, I like how you said practice as if that were true. And as you're practicing, not just being caught up in the practice and getting stuck at that level, but checking in to see how it affects the external world and internal as well.
Yes, you can see how, check in to see how it affects the external world. That's not that in and of itself will give you some material for reflection or feedback, but the problem is, of course, that if you are acting from a perspective and a feeling of oneness, let's say the other person who is receiving your expression may not be able to recognize that, and so their reaction may actually be resistant. So it's important to recognize that aspect. You take a simple example. If you correct a young child, then they're going to resist, but you're doing it out of love, care, knowledge of what's in their best interest. And the fact that they are resisting is just an unfortunate and unavoidable outcome. But you understand from the adult's perspective that, you know, it's still the right thing to do. It's not an indication that it's the wrong thing. In the same way, when you act from your ideal, the effect on the environment may not always look, like sunshine and rainbows, but that doesn't mean that it was the wrong thing. But having said that, yes, you are also looking at the effect on the environment. And generally speaking, if you, for example, are more sharing and giving, the feedback will be openness and connection from others. So it's a more of a general thing rather than a specific event or specific interaction type of feedback.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So another continuation question. So when you have Shraddha, it is one umbrella, and under that you can have ideals. It's not like you have many different Shraddha toward different ideals. It's just the basic Shraddha towards self-development or purity or self-realization. It's not like separate things. It's just one direction. It's just a direction, sense of direction.
Yeah, you can think of it perhaps as, like, another word you could use to try and understand it perhaps is discipline. So let's say you have the goal of maintaining and improving your physical fitness and health. So in that overall goal, you have, say, food and dietary changes, lifestyle changes, exercise, sleep, water, etc., whatever goes in there. Do you have different disciplines for the sleep? You're going to bed at the right time. Do you have different discipline for sleep and food and exercise and lifestyle? Or is it all part of the same sense of discipline? So you might find actually that, I have a much easier time exercising than I do changing my food habits, because I love my, cookies and cake. But exercise, I find that much easier to sustain, but tougher when it comes to being disciplined with my eating. So in that sense, you can call them different, but it's not really. It's the same fundamental discipline. It just is being applied in different areas of your personality, and so it looks different. That direction, as you said, it has a force in that direction. But when it comes to, say, my eating, there's a headwind. And so it seems diminished. When it comes to exercise, it's actually a tailwind for me. So it actually seems to be going even faster. So you're right. It's the same overall sense of direction, commitment, conviction, inspiration, but being applied to different areas.
Thank you, that helps.
Any other queries or questions?
I have another question. It's on a different, completely different area. So in terms of law of karma only talks about cause and effect, the way I understand it, cause and effect as it relates to people at the level of, at their 3 personality levels. And basically it has the angle of you are what you are based on all your past actions, thoughts, and emotions. But you are also not a victim of your past and present, and you can choose your future based on what you do right now. So a combination of your prarabdha and your purushartha. But law of karma does not talk about the resultant effect. And I'm not sure if that's a term or if it just helps me understand that. So aside from law of karma is one angle, but on the other side, you know that you are not you don't operate in a vacuum, that it's a combination of your destiny and your self-effort, but also all the other causes that go into whatever it is that you're operating through. Or does law of karma also extend to that?
You mean, does it extend to the environment?
And other players?
I mean, all the laws are always being applied globally. Your karma is essentially you reaping the effects of your actions. So I'm not, I guess I'm not 100% sure on the question, but you are making choices regarding the environments that you are entering into. And that's, again, as you say, based on your nature. The gambler is found in the gambling house, the exercise person is found at the gym. You're also, so that, if you like, is determining the stimuli that you are receiving. You're making choices regarding the stimuli that you receive. You're also interpreting those stimuli in a particular way. If I have an inferiority complex, then when someone gives me helpful, critical advice, I take it as a slight, whereas it wasn't. It was actually meant to be helpful. I react in different ways. and then I respond in different ways, all according to my nature. So the causes and effects are always manifesting. So as far as the environment goes, my environment suits the karma that I'm experiencing by virtue of the fact that I've chosen to be in certain places. At the same time, yes, there is that freedom to act that we have as human beings, which means that the environments that I'm entering into are being modified by other players. But again, the way that I view what that environment is going to be dictated and determined by my own nature, which is an effect of my past thoughts, desires, actions. The other thing to remember is, and this is where, so that's that part of it is very practical and very easy to understand. That the way that I experience my life is my responsibility, because it's my temperament, it's my personality, it's my worldview that determines that. And I am in charge of the worldview that I have. If I don't do anything to address it, then I stay stuck at that level. That's the effect of my choice of an action. If I choose to be self-reflective and growth-oriented, my worldview changes, and I improve my outlook. I improve the experiences of my life. So there's that responsibility there. The more esoteric and theoretical aspect of it is to say that the environment that you enter into will always match, and that you, in a sense, you get what you deserve, not what you desire, which can also be put as you won't get what you don't deserve. So your environment won't present to you things that you haven't, if you like, earned as a result. So there seems to be a conflict here with the notion of free will, because others are choosing to act. The important thing to remember is that we have choice of action, we don't have choice of outcome. So your choice of action is to hammer the nail into the board. The outcome is that you hit the nail on the side and it bends and you strike your thumb. Now, you didn't choose to strike your thumb, but that's what you got. You have choice of action. I intend to hit the nail, bang, straight on top of its head. The outcome is something different to my intention. So in a similar way, others can intend to act and intend to create a particular environment, but you won't receive that if it isn't in line with your own karma. So what that means is that, if you like, the law of karma, or another way to put it, is that nature will intervene in such a way that you don't get what you have not earned. Now, what does that intervention look like? Who knows? But the idea is that it's a kaleidoscope, very complex and impenetrable kaleidoscope. We can't understand it. But again, this is where the esoteric or the faith element comes in. We have this faith that nature is fit together perfectly to accommodate. And that as one person acts, other parts of the system are all acting simultaneously with it to create this cosmos, this orchestrated universal whole where the laws are maintained. You can use an analogy at the material level of, say, physics. You know, I've heard this spoken about a few times. If you're on a train, it's, 20 passengers and 20 passenger carriages and some luggage and so forth, traveling at 100 kilometers an hour. It's got this tremendous momentum. Now, if you roll a bowling ball down the center of one of the carriages, the center of momentum and the center of gravity and all that stuff is changing. It's actually shifting. It's imperceptible to all of the passengers, but you're actually shifting that. I've heard it put in terms of if you throw a rock into a river, you're changing the center of gravity of the whole planet. Okay, technically you are. It's not observable to us, but it's nonetheless happening. So in a similar sort of way, every time you make a move, we're changing the karmic center of gravity, if you like. And it's all fitting together in such a way, nature is presenting itself in such a way as that the laws are maintained, that you receive according to your own efforts.
So to help me understand, law of karma determines what I get based on the actions that I'm engaged in, which I don't know what it's really going to be. I have no choice in expecting or wanting something to be. I can want it, but doesn't mean I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
And this law of karma, like my karma, is it's a microcosm within the big macrocosm of all the other karmas that are running around, and they all fit together perfectly.
Yeah, you can think of it that way. It's important to remember that all the other karmas is a division and a demarcation that we can make for the purposes of discussion. But from the perspective of nature, there aren't different karmas. In the same way that when you look through the kaleidoscope and turn the cylinders, there aren't different movements. There's a single movement. It's all moving together, and everything's fitting exactly where it should be. So we can talk about different karmas from the, again, just to understand that this person's growing and becoming more peaceful, and this person's staying static, and this person is devolving. So we can talk about different karmas from that perspective. But when we take the global perspective or the macrocosmic perspective, the idea is that in fact there's if you like, a single law of causation, and it's sustaining the apparent different parts as this kaleidoscopic cosmic whole. So again, that's where the sort of devotional or esoteric or mysterious aspect comes in, because this is obviously pure conjecture that we can get a sense of without feeling, and it has a positive aspect obviously in the idea that we are one. There is a single expression of the universe, and so with that thought we start to dissolve that sense of being an individual unit alone in the universe, completely disconnected. So that's the benefit of it, is that it can give us that sense of connection and diminish the sense of isolation and separation that is the ego. But like all theories that we can't sit and prove, if we blindly accept them, then there can be negative consequences. So it's a sort of a balancing act. The more practical way to help to balance that idea is to say that I'm responsible for my choices here and now. And there are things I can do to make myself happier, things that I can do to make myself sadder, to put it that way. There are unavoidable aspects of my nature that I can't control. I have a particular brain structure. I was born with that. But there are things I can do to improve my lot. So let me do those.
So when you think about, I can't control what I get, instead of thinking that there are all these other forces out there, it would be a better way of thinking that everything, like you said, everything works in nature as a whole, and I just don't have the ability to see all that I don't know.
Yeah. It's, you think of it, rather than saying it's a better way to think about it, because again, if you say that, it could have some, if you force something that is not true for you, it can lead you to sort of some stagnation. But what I would say is add it into the mix. Consider this as a perspective. Consider maybe it's the truth that this is the case. And as long as you, again, we touched, so this is actually related to Shraddha, as long as you are aware that you're viewing it through a lens, a spiritual or a philosophical lens, that you don't know that it's true. As long as you're aware that you're looking through that lens, it can be a way to, as you say, alleviate the sense of victimization, a recognition that all is well, even though it's not pleasant for me at the moment. It is, the laws are functioning. And if it was random, then it would be really depressing, because no matter what I do that's good, I could end up, more and more miserable. But the laws are functioning. So there is an ordainer there. There's a coherent intelligence in nature. And if I put in certain efforts, then things will move in that direction. So yeah, if you look at it from that perspective, I'm getting what is appropriate for my past actions. It can help you drop that sense of victimization, that burden, and give you a sense of, okay, well then let me start moving in the right direction. But you can obviously see how it could be misused by the ego. Oh, I'm a terrible person. This is my lot in life. I'm destined to be this way. This bad thing has happened to me. I must be a morally bad person. It doesn't work that way. It's an overly simplistic view. It's an appropriation of the idea by the ego to keep itself, feeling miserable.
Along the same lines, okay, as we're practicing Shraddha towards an ideal, so a jnani, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly or not, has the understanding and the knowledge that, as you said, where I am is because of my past action. This is what I deserve, but I am not a victim of it. And I need to, I focus on the action, knowing that I'm not the doer, and so I do action, even if it's bad action, rather than inaction. And I do it with the idea of faith and wanting to recognize and understand what I believe is true, and do it with a level of separation and not being involved in the action. So I have that top-down Sakshi view. And so I can, as I'm acting, I try to practice that way of what a jnani does. And my bhakti practice would be the devotional part, where I accept what's coming to me, because of, again, what I deserve. I don't know what it is, but use it as a gift towards remembering that even if I get something that is not, it may look like not a good thing, but that it's there to help me redirect towards my ideal, and have the humility of not knowing that I know best. Is that accurate, or am I off somewhere? Or is there?
I mean, it's all accurate. But it's important not to overcomplicate things. If you're trying to juggle 20 different concepts all at the same time and apply them, then the attention can kind of be scattered.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of your knowledge practice, jnanam, it's just reflecting on what is my ideal. The bhakti practice is a sense of surrender to whatever I have to do and whatever the experience is, sort of a thy will be done type of attitude, rather than too much of an analysis. Bhakti or devotion is the feeling side rather than the analysis side. Where they come together is in the practice of action. So chapter 3, verse 30 of the Bhagavad Gita beautifully weaves all this together. For someone who is in the practice of action, there is the knowledge being practiced, there is the intellectual attention, the recognition, the knowledge on the higher, and you're also using the intellect to sustain your concentration on that. The subtle intellect envisages a source that lies beyond the material layers. So the gross and subtle intellect, they both function. The mind surrenders to that ideal rather than saying, but I want something else. And there is that acceptance, as you say, that acceptance of what is, thy will be done. And whatever needs to be done, I'll do it. And whatever experience I have, this is God's will, if you want to put it in those sorts of poetic terms. You don't have to believe in God to have that kind of attitude. And the active component is that you're performing your obligation. And so there you have the karma, bhakti, jnanam, the action, the devotion, and the knowledge all woven together. So the important thing is to keep it as simple as possible. Otherwise, our attention can get too caught up with making sure we're doing all the right stuff rather than doing the right stuff. It can become result oriented. And it's also, it's important to remember that these, the ideas that we're discussing, they're all sort of medicines, they're antidotes to other wrong ways of thinking. So rather than saying, well, I've got to take every supplement on the shelf, so what deficiencies do I have? Okay, I'm vegan, so I take B12. That's one that I really need. So it's a matter of, again, tailoring it specifically to meet your spiritual needs, rather than making sure that I'm eating every idea equally.
And those needs will change over time, and then you would then change your practice accordingly. Yeah,
those needs change pretty gradually. They're very slow in terms of that kind of change. When I say gradually, it can be that you sometimes have sort of little quantum leaps, but it's gradual in the sense of, we always use the example of titration. You add one drop of liquid, it stays colorless, add another, stays colorless, add drop after drop. Eventually it goes bright crimson. with one drop. Well, it's been one drop after 100 prior to it. So yeah, the needs will change over time, but they will be pretty gradual. And your basic nature is quite fixed. So if you're someone who is very drawn to the analytical side, and you love thinking about things and putting things into categories and putting things into a system of understanding, it's not going to be that after a couple of years of practice, all of a sudden you're going to throw that away and simply want to chant and sing and praise the name of your particular personal God. You don't become a different person. You'll stay analytical. Other areas of your personality may start to flesh out a little bit. You might become more devotional as that area takes its natural place. But your basic nature will change. But yes, one of the things that does change is that over time you perhaps become more introverted. And so you'll find that a more reflective practice becomes something that you need more of. And you might diminish the amount of time spent in outward connected action, perhaps. You still need to do that, and all three are required, but the proportions may shift over time. Yeah.
Thank you, Glenn.
Any other queries or questions? Okay, if not, thank you for the questions. Always appreciated.
Thank you, Glenn.
All right, we're back Sunday morning Pacific time for our not Q&A, for VT. So for those joining, see you then.